he had the thing, and he had anger in it.
From the Williams brothers carrying the Tookie legacy to Big Meech's boy, Lil Meech running Hollywood to Larry Hoover Jr.
He had a very big part because he started it all off. He put us on the platform.
The apple doesn't fall far from the criminal tree. These are sons of black mafia bosses who took over and have written different chapters to their father's bloodthirsty stories. Julian Alphonse Williams, the ghost son who vanished into thin air. Julian Alphonse Williams, born around the mid-1960s, represents the ultimate escape from his father's bloody legacy, a masterclass in disappearing acts that would make FBI witnesses jealous. As the eldest son of Stanley Tookie Williams III, co-founder of the notorious Crips gang that painted Los Angeles blue with violence and cocaine, Julian chose the path less traveled, complete and total anonymity that borders on the supernatural. While his father was building a criminal empire that would claim thousands of lives across Los Angeles and inspire countless hip-hop anthems about gang life, Julian was being strategically raised by his maternal grandmother and aunt in San Diego, deliberately shielded from the blue bandana world that consumed his bloodline like a generational curse. Born before his father's 1979 arrest for 4 murders that would eventually lead to his 2005 execution, Julian had minimal exposure to the gang's violent operations that turned South Central into America's most dangerous war zone. No arrests, no convictions, no gang colors, no street credibility. Julian represents what happens when a kingpin's son says, "Not today, Satan," to the streets and actually means it. As of 2025, his whereabouts remain completely unknown, maintaining a ghost-like existence that would make witness protection programs study his methodology. But speaking of brothers who couldn't escape the gravitational pull of their father's reputation, like planets orbiting a violent sun. Trayvon Williams, the reformed soldier turned social justice warrior. Trayvon Williams, born around 1972, experienced the full force of his father's criminal empire firsthand like a child soldier in America's urban warfare zones. Growing up in South Central Los Angeles as Stanley Tookie Williams' middle son, Trayvon didn't just hear bedtime stories about Crips life, he lived it, breathed it, and nearly died from it. By the 2000s, this reformed gang member had transformed into a social services worker, dedicating his life to steering kids away from the blue flag that nearly consumed him like quicksand. It's the kind of dramatic character arc that Hollywood screenwriters dream about, from gang member to gang prevention specialist, like a former arsonist becoming a firefighter. Trayvon's connection to the Crips wasn't theoretical classroom knowledge. He joined as a youth, riding on his father's notorious reputation like a twisted version of nepotism where the family business involves murder and cocaine distribution. The streets of LA don't care if you're trying to be different when your last name is Williams and your father co-founded the most dangerous gang in America. At his father's 2005 funeral, Trayvon raised his fist alongside Nation of Islam leaders, a symbolic gesture that spoke volumes about family loyalty transcending criminal activity, the kind of moment that defines a man's character when cameras are rolling and the world is watching. His redemption story hit a legal snag when he contested his father's will in 2006, claiming it unfairly favored collaborator Barbara Becknell, who helped Tookie write anti-gang children's books from death row. The legal battle was more than money. It was about controlling his father's narrative and ensuring the Williams family maintained some influence over Tookie's posthumous legacy. The challenge was dismissed in 2007, but Trayvon's real victory came in breaking the cycle that claimed so many South Central sons. In 2025, he continues working in the Los Angeles area, promoting anti-gang initiatives while raising his son Chazak. However, not all Williams boys chose rehabilitation over retaliation, and some lessons learned in blood can never be unlearned. Stanley Williams IV, the fallen prince who embraced the darkness. Stanley Williams IV, known as Little Tookie, was born in the early 1980s and represents the tragic continuation of his father's violent path, like a hereditary curse that skips generations only to return with doubled intensity. While Big Tookie was writing anti-gang children's books from death row, desperately trying to prevent other kids from following his bloody footsteps, his youngest son was busy proving that rehabilitation messages don't always reach home. Sometimes the apple falls so close to the tree it lands in the same bloody soil and grows into the same poisonous fruit. At approximately 17 years old in 1997, Stanley IV was convicted of murder in the shooting death of Cambodian refugee Thich Thon during a robbery in Long Beach. a crime so brutal and senseless that it shocked even veteran homicide detectives who thought they'd seen everything. The apple didn't just fall close to the tree, it landed in the same bloody soil and immediately began sprouting the same violent tendencies that made his father a household name for all the wrong reasons. Stanley IV and his fellow Crips members robbed Ton's home, killing him in front of his family, a crime that echoed his father's violent methodology with chilling precision, the kind of generational trauma that psychologists write dissertations about but can never fully explain. Sentenced to 16 years to life, he's been California's guest ever since, proving that some family traditions die harder than others. The irony cuts deeper than a prison shank. While Tookie was nominated for Nobel Peace Prizes for his anti-gang writings, attempting to redeem his legacy through literature and advocacy, his son was cementing the family's violent legacy with his own murder conviction, essentially writing his father's redemption efforts in blood. In 2019, Stanley IV was briefly paroled but immediately detained by ICE due to immigration issues, despite being U.S. born. A bureaucratic nightmare that kept him imprisoned even when the state said he could go free. As of 2025, he remains incarcerated with no public reform efforts. Speaking of sons who capitalized on their father's notoriety for legitimate purposes rather than perpetuating cycles of violence, Demetrius Lil Meech Flenory Jr., the Hollywood heir who turned crime into prime time. Demetrius Lil Meech Flenory Jr., born April 22, 2000, transformed his father's drug empire into entertainment gold with the kind of alchemical genius that would make medieval sorcerers jealous. As the son of Demetrius Big Meech Flenory, co-founder of the Black Mafia family that once moved more cocaine than Pablo Escobar's wildest dreams, Lil Meech didn't inherit kilos of cocaine or automatic weapons. He inherited something far more valuable in 2025 America, a story worth millions and the charisma to sell it to Hollywood executives who turned criminal legacies into Emmy nominations. Starring as his father in the Starz series BMF, produced by 50 Cent, he's averaging 10.6 million viewers per season, while building a legitimate empire from his father's criminal ashes, like a phoenix rising from the drug trade's destruction. It's the kind of career transformation that makes guidance counselors rethink everything they know about following your dreams, especially when your dreams involve playing your father, who trafficked enough cocaine to supply a small nation's addiction problems. Raised primarily by his mother, Latara Utsi, in Miami after his father's 2005 arrest, Lil Meech learned about Big Meech's operations later in life, like discovering your father was Batman, but instead of fighting crime, he was importing it by the truckload. His link to BMF is purely hereditary, but he's leveraged it masterfully with the kind of strategic thinking that would make business school professors take notes. Through intensive acting training, 5 days a week for 2 years, he transformed from a University of Nevada business student into Hollywood's newest crime drama star, proving that sometimes the best way to honor a criminal legacy is by making it legally profitable. His preparation involved daily conversations with his incarcerated father, learning mannerisms and speech patterns to authentically portray the man who built a cocaine empire that stretched from Detroit to Atlanta like a pharmaceutical company with worse customer service. The legal hiccups haven't helped his squeaky clean image, though they've certainly added authenticity to his street credibility. In 2022, he was arrested for allegedly stealing a $250,000 Richard Mille watch in what appeared to be a consignment deal gone wrong, and later that year for carrying a firearm at Fort Lauderdale Airport in a mix-up with his security team's luggage. Both charges were dropped faster than a hot potato, with his attorney proving the gun belonged to his security team, and the watch situation was a business misunderstanding rather than grand theft auto with jewelry. With a net worth of approximately $1.05 million in 2024, Lil Meech proves that sometimes the best way to honor a criminal legacy is by making it legal, profitable, and entertaining enough to win awards. But while he's making Hollywood magic with his father's story, another son of a kingpin chose a different path to redemption. Larry Hoover Jr., the reformer's son who turned advocacy into art.
He had a very big part because he started it all off. He put us on the platform.
Larry Hoover Jr., born in 1974, represents the ultimate transformation from gang royalty to social justice advocate, with the kind of character development that makes Shakespeare's redemption arcs look like amateur hour. As the son of Larry Hoover Sr., founder of the 30,000 member gangster disciples that generated $100 million annually through drug trafficking, and violence that turned Chicago into a war zone, Larry Jr. could have easily inherited a criminal empire bigger than most Fortune 500 companies. Instead, he graduated from Brother Rice High School and Morris Brown College, choosing education over the streets that claimed his father's freedom and thousands of young lives in Chicago's South Side. Born after his father's 1973 incarceration for murder, Larry Jr. grew up visiting Hoover Sr. in prison, building a relationship through glass barriers rather than gang meetings, learning about fatherhood through collect calls and supervised visits rather than street corner conferences. His connection to the gangster disciples remains purely familial, but he's weaponized that legacy for good with the kind of strategic thinking that would make political campaign managers jealous of his messaging effectiveness. Co-founding the Paradigm Shift Academy with his mother Wendy Jenkins, Larry Jr. focuses on steering youth away from the gang life that consumed his father like a black hole that devours everything in its gravitational pull. It's ironic justice, using the Hoover name to prevent other kids from becoming statistics in Chicago's endless gang wars, essentially turning his father's criminal legacy into a vaccination program against street violence. The spotlight found him through tragedy and triumph, proving that sometimes you have to use fame to fight for justice. Featured on Kanye West's 2021 album Donda, discussing criminal justice reform, Larry Jr. used his platform to advocate for his father's release with the kind of strategic media manipulation that would make PR professionals study his methodology. Following President Trump's commutation of his father's federal sentences in May 2025, Larry Jr. continues pushing for state clemency with the persistence of a telemarketer who actually believes in his product. With an estimated net worth of $5 million from real estate and entertainment ventures, he's proof that sometimes the son surpasses the father's influence through legitimate means, building wealth without building body counts. However, not every kingpin's offspring chose the high road when faced with inheriting criminal legacies. Frank Lucas Jr., the invisible heir who mastered the art of disappearing. Frank Lucas Jr., born around 1996, represents the ultimate disappearing act in criminal legacy management, with skills that would make professional magicians study his methodology for decades. As the son of notorious Harlem drug lord Frank Lucas, whose heroin empire inspired American Gangster and generated enough cash to buy small countries, Frank Jr. mastered the art of invisibility better than his father mastered smuggling heroin from Southeast Asia in the coffins of Vietnam War veterans. With a documented disability requiring federal assistance, Frank Jr.'s only brush with his father's criminal notoriety came when Frank Sr. stole his disability check in 2012, making him a victim of the Lucas criminal legacy rather than a perpetrator. Born during or after his father's multiple prison sentences, Frank Jr. was shielded from the height of the Lucas empire that once generated up to $1 million daily through blue magic heroin distribution that turned Harlem into an open-air pharmacy with worse customer service than the DMV. Unlike his sister Francine Lucas Sinclair, who founded Yellow Brick Road's nonprofit for children of incarcerated parents and became a public advocate for criminal justice reform, Frank Jr. chose complete obscurity with the dedication of a monk taking vows of silence. The ultimate irony of Frank Jr.'s story lies in becoming a victim of his own father's criminality. His father's theft of his $17,345 disability check in 2012 ironically made Frank Jr. a victim of the Lucas criminal legacy rather than a perpetrator, proving that sometimes criminal families consume their own children like cannibalistic organisms that can't stop devouring everything around them, including their offspring's government benefits. As of 2025, his whereabouts remain completely unknown, with no social media presence, public records, or media coverage that would suggest he exists anywhere in the digital universe. Frank Jr. Hype West superpower isn't trafficking drugs or building criminal empires. It's remaining invisible in an age of digital footprints where privacy is rarer than honest politicians. With his father's death in 2019, Frank Jr. successfully avoided both the spotlight and the streets, proving that sometimes the best inheritance is choosing not to inherit at all, especially when the family business involves federal prison sentences and early graves. Speaking of sons who couldn't escape their father's gravitational pull like planets orbiting violent suns, Watkita Fort, the Motown prince who built his own kingdom. Watkita Fort, born around 1970, inherited more than his father's criminal instincts. He inherited the throne to one of Chicago's most violent gang empires and decided to make it his own with the kind of entrepreneurial spirit that would make business schools create case studies if the product wasn't crack cocaine. As the son of Jeff Fort, founder of the Black P-Stone Nation and its El Rucky N faction that terrorized Chicago's South Side for decades, Watkita didn't just join the family business, he revitalized it with the innovation of a tech startup CEO whose product happened to be violence and drug distribution. Leading the Motown set in Englewood during the 1990s, he controlled territory from 51st to 57th Streets like a feudal lord whose kingdom was measured in city blocks and whose currency was crack rocks and fear. Known as Prince Watkita or Prince Kita, he rose through the Jet Blackstone's faction, establishing dominance in a power vacuum left by federal takedowns of El Rukn leadership that created opportunities for ambitious princes to become kings of their own territories. His followers called themselves Moes, short for Moors, blending his father's religious rebranding with street-level drug operations in a synthesis that would make sociology professors write dissertations about the intersection of spirituality and criminality. From 1991 to 1992, his crack cocaine operation near 54th and Bishop Streets used minors as young as 14 as couriers, proving that some business models require child labor that would make Victorian factory owners blush with shame. At his 1997 plea hearing, Watkita stated, "I was born into this. I had no other choice," before receiving a 30-year federal sentence that effectively ended his criminal career before he turned 30, likely released around 2022 to 2023 with good time credits. His current whereabouts remain unknown, but his legacy in Englewood persists like ghost stories that mothers tell their children to keep them inside after dark. With 32 arrests dating back to 1988, Watkita proved that some apples don't just fall close to the tree, they plant new ones in the same bloody soil and grow forests of violence that consume entire neighborhoods. But not every Fort son survived the family business long enough to see federal prison. Antonio Fort, the murdered prince who paid the ultimate price. Antonio Fort, known as Prince Akeem, was born around 1966 and represented the tragic cost of criminal inheritance, like a Shakespearean tragedy written in blood and cocaine with an ending that nobody saw coming but everyone should have predicted. As one of Jeff Fort's eldest sons and leader of the Black Pea Stone Nation's terror town set in South Shore, Antonio's story reads like a cautionary tale about what happens when family loyalty meets substance abuse in the pressure cooker of Chicago gang politics. Less charismatic than his brother Watkita, but equally committed to the family business, Antonio's substance abuse issues made him a liability in an organization that demanded unwavering loyalty and clear thinking for survival. The BPSN wasn't a forgiving employer, and addiction was seen as weakness in a world where weakness equaled death sentences delivered by rival gangs or disappointed fathers who valued the organization over blood relations. Serving from 1992 to 1996 for conspiracy to purchase cocaine in Evanston, Antonio returned to a BPSN torn by internal conflicts and rival gang pressures that would make corporate merger negotiations look like children's birthday parties. His leadership of Terror Town involved managing drug operations during the 1990s gang wars, when Chicago's South Side resembled Beirut during its worst periods, but his addiction problems created friction within the organization, like sand in a well-oiled machine designed for violence and profit. The ultimate betrayal came from within, as sources suggest Jeff Fort even ordered drummings, disciplinary beatings, of his own son for disloyalty, highlighting the brutal reality of gang family dynamics where blood relations mean nothing when business interests are threatened. It's the kind of father-son relationship that makes Darth Vader look like Father of the Year material. On March 27, 1997, Antonio's bullet-riddled body was found in Wolf Lake on the Illinois-Indiana border, 3 weeks after his wife reported him missing, creating a mystery that reads like a crime novel where everyone knows who did it, but nobody can prove it. Identified by a red 23 inches t-shirt and El Rukn 5-point star tattoo, his murder remains officially unsolved, though gang associates whispered about power struggles and paternal disappointment like ancient Greek choruses commenting on inevitable tragedies. While Antonio met a violent end that shocked even hardened gang members, other sons of Chicago's gang royalty faced different but equally challenging fates. David Barksdale Jr., the vanished heir who wrote his own ending. David Barksdale Jr., born around 1966 to 1974, represents the ultimate success story in criminal legacy escape artistry, with techniques so effective they should be taught in witness protection training programs nationwide. As the son of King David Barksdale, founder of the Black Disciples that became one of Chicago's most powerful and religiously structured gangs, David Jr. had a front row seat to Chicago's gang royalty and chose to exit stage left with the timing of a professional magician performing his greatest disappearing act. Orphaned by his father's 1974 death from complications of a 1970 shooting and his mother Yvonne's 1977 murder, David Jr. learned early that the crown comes with a target painted on your back in permanent marker that never fades, no matter how much you try to scrub it off. The violent deaths of both parents before he reached adolescence taught him lessons about criminal legacy that most kids learn from fairy tales, except his bedtime stories involved real monsters with real guns who really killed people he loved. Growing up in Englewood, the Black Disciples' stronghold, David Jr. was surrounded by the gang's quasi-religious structure, where ministers led drug operations, and violence was sanctified as devotion to King David's memory, like a twisted version of Christianity where the communion wine was replaced with crack cocaine, and the holy sacraments involved drive-by shootings. Unlike his murdered brother Ronnie, who fell victim to gang warfare in 1996 like so many sons of criminal royalty, David Jr. mastered the art of invisibility with techniques that would make professional spies jealous of his methodology. With no documented criminal record or public presence, he achieved what most kingpin sons only dream of: complete anonymity in a world where everyone wants to be famous for 15 minutes, even if that fame comes from continuing their father's violent legacy. The Black Disciples continue celebrating his father's birthday annually, including a controversial 2008 parade that drew protests from community activists. As of 2025, his whereabouts and activities remain completely unknown, making him perhaps the most successful Barksdale in terms of survival, proving that sometimes the best way to win the game is refusing to play it at all. His sister Melinda and half-brother Derek Falker also maintain low profiles, suggesting the family learned that sometimes the best way to honor a criminal legacy is by forgetting it exists and building new identities from scratch. But not every Barksdale son managed such a clean escape from their father's violent shadow. Ronnie Barksdale, the slain prince who couldn't escape destiny. Ronnie Barksdale's story ended in 1996 with a gangster disciple's bullet, proving that being the son of King David Barksdale offered no immunity from Chicago's gang warfare that consumed young men like a wood chipper that never stops grinding. Born around the same time as his brother David Jr., Ronnie grew up in the shadow of his father's legendary status as founder of the Black Disciples. But unlike his vanished sibling who mastered the art of disappearing, Ronnie couldn't escape the gravitational pull of Englewood streets that called to him like sirens, singing songs of violence and revenge. Orphaned at a young age when his father died in 1974 from complications of a rival gang shooting, then losing his mother Yvonne to murder in 1977, Ronnie was raised in a neighborhood where his surname carried both reverence and danger, like wearing a crown made of razor blades that cuts you every time you move your head. The Black Disciples had merged with Larry Hoover's Gangster Disciples in 1972 to form the Black Gangster Disciple Nation. But by the 1990s, factionalism had turned former allies into enemies, with the kind of bitter hatred that only comes from broken brotherhood. The tragic irony of Ronnie's fate lies in the politics of Chicago gang alliances that shifted like sand dunes in a desert windstorm. His murder by a gangster disciple member in 1996 represented the ultimate betrayal, killed by descendants of his father's own alliance, proving that in Chicago gang politics, yesterday's friends become tomorrow's executioners with the reliability of changing seasons. It's like being killed by your own family members who decided that old grudges matter more than blood relations. At approximately 22, 30 years old, Ronnie's death mirrored the violent fate that claimed Antonio Fort the following year, highlighting the dangerous inheritance that comes with being born into gang royalty, where the crown is made of lead bullets and the throne is located in a cemetery. No details of his criminal involvement are documented, suggesting he may have been targeted for his name rather than his actions, proving that sometimes in the streets, your father's reputation is both your greatest asset and your death sentence. While the Barksdale brothers met different fates, one vanishing, one murdered, other young men were building their own criminal empires without famous bloodlines. Billy Arnold, the 7-Mile general who built an empire from nothing. Billy Arnold, born around 1987, proves that you don't need a famous criminal father to build a murderous empire that would make seasoned mafia dons respect your business model and fear your methodology. As founder and leader of Detroit's 7-Mile Bloods, Arnold transformed the Red Zone, around 48205 zip code, into his personal kingdom through ruthless violence and strategic drug operations that turned Motor City into Murder City faster than you could say economic decline. Though not the son of a black mafia boss, his rapid rise from teenager to kingpin by age 21 around 2008 rivals any legacy heir's ambition and surpasses most of their actual achievements. Arnold's empire wasn't inherited through bloodlines or family connections. It was built through blood and bullets with the kind of entrepreneurial spirit that would make business schools create case studies if the product wasn't human misery and the business model didn't involve multiple homicides. His rise to power reads like a twisted version of the American dream where hard work and determination pay off, except the work involved organizing murders, and the determination meant never backing down from violent confrontations that left bodies scattered across Detroit like confetti at a deadly parade. The 2014 parole office murder he orchestrated sparked a wave of retaliatory killings that turned Detroit into a war zone where even parole officers weren't safe from the violence, establishing the 7 Mile Bloods as Detroit's most feared gang with the kind of reputation that makes hardened criminals cross the street when they see red bandanas. His crew trafficked opioids from Detroit to West Virginia while maintaining violent control over their territory, proving that modern gang leadership requires both business acumen and sociopathic tendencies that would make corporate executives look like Sunday school teachers. The true measure of Arnold's criminal genius lies in his ability to maintain control even from behind bars. Even from prison, Arnold continued directing murders and drug deals using contraband cell phones, demonstrating the kind of institutional control that would make old-school Mafia dons jealous of his organizational skills and fear his reach. His prison-based operations proved that concrete, walls and steel bars were just minor inconveniences for a criminal mastermind who treated federal incarceration like a temporary business relocation. But while Detroit's king fell from his bloody throne, another self-made boss was building his own violent legacy in Brooklyn's mean streets. Malik "Mo Money" Herald, the bully king who turned Brooklyn into his personal ATM. Malik "Mo Money" Herald, born around 1989, transformed Bedford-Stuyvesant's mean streets into his personal ATM with the kind of criminal innovation that would make Wall Street traders jealous of his profit margins and terrified of his collection methods. As founder of Brooklyn's bully gang, Herald proved that you don't inherit criminal empires. You build them with cousins, childhood friends, and an appetite for violence that would make seasoned killers nervous about working overtime. Though not the son of a black mafia boss, his sophisticated operations spanning from New York to Maine earned him federal kingpin status by his mid-20s, proving that ambition and sociopathy can substitute for criminal bloodlines. Starting the bully gang around 2015 at age 26, Herald's enterprise trafficked crack, heroin, and fentanyl while maintaining headquarters at 1625 Fulton Street. From 2019 to 2021, using comic books and papers soaked in synthetic cannabinoids, he corrupted correction officers and generated massive profits while incarcerated for unrelated charges, demonstrating the kind of criminal creativity that would make prison wardens rethink their security protocols and contraband detection methods. His ability to turn children's comic books into drug delivery systems showed an innovative spirit that would make tech entrepreneurs applaud his ingenuity if they weren't horrified by his methodology. The March 2018 murder of Jonathan Jackson at a gender reveal party for Herald's child escalated Brooklyn's gang wars beyond repair, proving that some celebrations end with more than cake and presents. Sometimes they end with body bags and federal investigations. Convicted on 21 counts in June 2024 after a 13-week trial, Herald now faces life imprisonment, proving that self-made criminal empires burn just as bright and just as fast as inherited ones, leaving nothing but ashes and federal case numbers. We have finally come to the end of this clip. For more of such content, please click on the card showing on the screen.